to start with, happy CAD to all of you, and a very good afternoon to all of you. I mean, this is an auspicious day where we assemble here to get to know some good insights from a very renowned personality, CA Bhaskar Banerjee, where we will get to know something about our institute, something about CAPM, Nariyal Wala, who was a stalwart for our profession.
I thank Mr. Rupta and his colleagues for inviting me to speak here at PM Nariyal Wala Memorial Lecture. It's a pleasure to speak at the Institute, but more so when it is in honor of somebody who was my guru, if I may put it that way. Most outstanding personality, those who have not seen him for their information. Most outstanding personality, and in my view, arguably the best speaker not only amongst chartered accountants but amongst all professions to ever come up from Eastern India. He was so articulate, he had so much clarity, he had so much vision. I think it was Mr. Haldar and others who have heard him before will agree with me that one of the most outstanding speakers that this part of India has ever produced, and it's an honor to speak in his memory, and obviously one falls far short of his standards, and but I must thank Mr. Rupta for inviting me. It's a pleasure. Now, I thought I'll speak on a subject which is neither accounting standards, nor tax, nor accounting, nor audit. Now, which amounts to taking a chance, because this is not a subject that one normally speaks at this kind of gatherings and so on. And maybe one is intruding upon territories which don't belong to us. But then I thought it may not be a bad idea, because as a responsible citizen of India, one can comment on every single aspect of the Indian situation, and that includes the Indian economy. And also I felt that this matter may be of some interest to you, what I intend to do is to illustrate and discuss with you certain controversies and issues. This will not be just iteration of the figures and facts, but I would like to raise a few points which, again, as I said, I am intruding on economist territories, but I feel that being an accountant, I may be right to also comment on these things, maybe wrongly, or maybe partially rightly, or whatever. So I intend to jog your thoughts. In other words, not a simple summary of facts and figures, although we start with some facts. But then I'll list out and discuss three important controversies or issues. You may not like to call them controversies. There are certainly issues which are capable of different interpretations. And depending on these interpretations, if I may make a very broad statement, the future of India may also depend on some of these points. Not that these are not being debated, these are being debated, but let me try and present to you a summary and my thoughts on the subject, which as I said may or may not be right. Hence the heading, Paradigms of Indian Economic Development, Contemporary Issues and Controversies. Now, I understand that all of you may not be able to see the entire slide. Maybe the bottom part of it is not, I think, visible, but we'll explain it as I go through. See, this is an index which you need not spend much time on, because we'll cover these points. But I'll tell you the logic of the index. Initially, we start with the performance during the last 13 months of the new government. A summary, a very bare bones summary of what has happened. And then what reforms we expected from the current government, and what has come to pass and what has not come to pass. So the first 4 sections is a kind of preamble to what we are going to discuss later. But this preamble is important, and the later parts of the index I will come to later. So let us start with the current 13 months. I think there is general consensus amongst all the informed readers and people who understand the subject and people who follow the subject, that there were expectations of big bang reforms which have not come to pass. Whatever reason. Now the reason could be more political than economic, because of certain constraints in terms of passing legislations and so on, which we'll cover shortly. The expectations have fallen short of the big bang reforms which one expected when in May 2014, the current government came to power. But then again, there have been currently statements from the government that we never intended Big Bang reform. This is an expectation from the media, from people, general people, and so on. We never promised Big Bang reforms because maybe it's not justified. So what they are doing is an incremental approach. This is the point 2 of the slide, that we will do reforms, but in a slow and organized fashion, and we'll take it slowly because India cannot bear, that's one strand of thought that they have, India cannot bear a whole lot of reforms together. It will cause chaos and cause a lot of confusion. And political compulsions, which I didn't want to say but I put on the slide, have been also a major limiting factor, particularly for two aspects which we will again discuss later, land acquisition and goods and services tax. Because of the various objections raised, they have not come to being as yet. But as we will illustrate, the objections have some value. It's not that we made a mistake by not allowing these two bills to be passed, which is land acquisition and goods and services tax. But there are valid problems and objections which have been raised in view of the problems. We will go through the major issues there also. So this is the preamble to start with. I think the reforms expected have not come to pass, which may or may not be a bad thing also, and political compulsions have played a factor. Also, the argument which is being put is that getting such a large country, because if you think of the size of India, it's not a matter to trifle with. The sheer size of it and the consequent different views and opinions on the subject also militate against a whole lot of reforms being put together without adequate consultations from various people who are various shades of opinion and various people who are interested in it. So that's another argument which is being put. And also, what is being cited is the various problems which the previous government left a legacy of, which includes inflationary pressures, infrastructure inadequacies, regulatory challenges which are there, always have been there, and fiscal issues. So these are the standard arguments which have been put forward, that it will take time to correct these issues and embark conscientiously on the path of reform. So therefore, in my view, it is still a bit early to pronounce a final judgment on the performance till date because of these several constraints which I just briefly outlined. But having said so, let us analyze the hits and misses. I have summarized where there have been positive achievements and where there have not been. Before that, what are the reforms which all of us expected, including everybody in the audience? I'm sure if you add up, I just did an addition, accounting summary of the points raised. If you just run through quickly, introduction of GST was one, then reform of labor laws, simplify labor laws in a sense which may or may not be again truly applicable to a large country like India, given the level of poverty. It's easy to say that we should have the right of retrenchment and so on. But anyway, so that was one of the objectives, one of the reforms expected. Utilization of mineral resources, coal blocks, and also spectrums, which has taken place. This has been somewhat, the government has taken positive steps in this direction already. Then improve the returns of agriculture by bank financing, improving roads and warehouse chains. Nothing much unfortunately has happened on that. Reduce interest rates. Now this is, as I mentioned in the beginning, this is one of the controversies which the country faces now, which is, should the Reserve Bank reduce interest rates or hold it or what? And this is one significant factor which may be impeding development at the moment. So reduce interest rates was a reform expected, hasn't really come to pass, except token gestures in this direction. Reduce inflation, that has happened, but it has been somewhat fortuitous in the sense of oil prices going down and so on. So to some extent the current government has been lucky in that respect, that they have managed to bring down inflation. Not entirely because of their own efforts, but again, I mean, you can't distinguish in this fashion. But inflation has gone down. Liberalize FDI, which has happened to a considerable extent, but not in multi-brand retail. privatization of non-performing PSUs, some baby steps have been taken, not fully as yet. Calibrate rupee-dollar rate judiciously to promote exports. Now here I will pause for a minute and explain this point. You've heard of these 90s Asian tigers, this Thailand, and everybody suddenly came up very fast and so on. There's interesting analysis by several economists that arising out of that Asian tiger story is that the easiest way, I mean this is debatable, any economic theory is this, easiest way to bring a country up is to increase exports. And how? By devaluation. In other words, you must make your, in this case rupee, make your currency cheaper, so it becomes, your exports become cheaper and consequently your balance of trade improves and so on. So this is one method which has been advocated by several economists, that is kind of devaluation to promote exports. But in this case, what was intended was to calibrate the rupee-dollar rate suitably. But you have seen the results, and there is a forecast that by end of July, rupee will become 65 to the dollar. And a certain investment banker in London tells me that don't even think 60, 65. Don't think around those figures. He says rupee will be 100 rupees to the dollar. When exactly he cannot predict, but he's saying maybe within a year and a half, 2 years, whatever, it will go more towards 100 than anything else. Now, this you might think is a madman's forecast, but look where rupee was and where it is now. So it is perfectly feasible. In which case, of course, your exports and so on might improve. It has unintended or intended side effects. Improve ease of doing business. Nothing much has been achieved. In fact, we are still ranked 142. This is a recent ranking. 142 out of 185 in the ease of doing business ranking. And I put the figures later. I think even Pakistan is 128. I should use the word even, but Pakistan is 128, and I think China is below 100. I mean it's 90 or so. So this is a listing of reforms and where we are. But I have slides on where we are. So let us look at that. These are the positive achievements. Limiting the fiscal deficit, which they had intended to 4.1% in 2014-15. I understand these are not final figures, but it should be around that. And they're targeting 3.9% in 2015-16. Current account deficit has been kept at 1.7% in 2014-15, but largely fortuitously, as I said, because of oil prices. Now, oil prices have since firmed up, and this calculation, this time it was around 40 to 45, below $50 a barrel. Now it has gone beyond 60. So what will happen to this figure now in 2015-16? We don't know. Controlling inflation, CPI, Consumer Price Index, around 5%, which was in 11.2% in November 2013. Then achieving a GDP growth rate of 7.4% in 2014-15. Here lies an interesting story in GDP. I think most of you are aware that recently the method of calculation of GDP has been changed. Because of the change in the method of calculation, what looked like in the UPA government time very low rates of growth, they were also recalibrated to 6.5, more than 6, at least 6.5, 6.7%. So suddenly, the various criticisms leveled at the previous government that the growth rates are low do not hold good, because maybe it has gone up to 7.4 now from 6.5 or 6.6, but not from 4.5. So therefore, there is inherent contradiction in the criticism, because if you recalculate the previous year GDP growth rates, they were much better than what was thought about. The last point is a positive one. Actually, FDI has gone up substantially because of the liberalization in the FDI rules. And the current figure which I could get hold of was in April 2015, which reached a figure of 3.6 billion, which is one of the highest in history, not the highest, but one of the highest in history. And overall in 2000, this is April 2015, that is the first year of 2015-16. But in 2014-15, FDI registered a 27% growth as compared to 2013-14. So in this matter, there has been substantial improvement. So fiscal deficit, current account deficit, inflation, which are all very important points. I think there is a fair degree of stability now. Liberalization of FDI regime, which I already mentioned in particularly defense, insurance, and the railways. Successful carrying out of coal and spectrum auctions, which I have already mentioned. And there is a method. Third point, there is a method in the current Prime Minister's approaches and forays abroad, which is to re-establish, I would say, contact with Indian diaspora abroad, who are really, some estimates say they're worth about $1 trillion, $1 trillion. So obviously there is a method in the matter, not just public relations. In other words, if you can mobilize some of these investments into India, even 5% of 1 trillion or whatever, 10%, that will be a huge thing. So there is a method in that, in those, being made in those efforts being made. Then direct benefit transfers have been better than before, particularly LPG. I asked a few people who are so-called bottom of the pile, and they are saying that we are getting the benefits of LPG. So I think the direct benefit transfer, DBT, has improved. Then these various schemes which have been announced, Make in India, Digital India, Skill India, and so on, such Bharat, these while are yet to be implemented, I think there is some merit in at least trying. Maybe the results will take about 7 to 10 years to fructify, but I think it's a positive effort to announce these schemes, at least to take some steps. And clean the Ganga, I forgot, that's a pretty important one also. Steps have been taken to control black money, which is, of course, what has been done is probably much less than what was promised. This is one area where substantial promises were made, but have not been achieved. However, the beginning has been made. Now, what are the performance deficits? Land acquisition and GST legislation, which were promised, have not come to pass for various reasons, which we will, particularly because of regulatory approvals, particularly one part of Parliament. But there are good reasons for it, as I mentioned earlier. Why these two bills? What changes are required? Without going to the details of these bills, one will discuss we will go through the irritating provisions here. Paucity of action on the non-performing assets of public sector banks, which is a very significant deficit which this government has not yet been able to correct. And this has had significant impact on the economy. Inability to effect interest cuts through Reserve Bank of India. That is also another issue. I've used the word through in a deliberate sense, because the government cannot make interest cuts. That power lies with Reserve Bank of India, not with the government. And there are several difficulties in the process of making Reserve Bank agree to the biddings of the government. So this is an important lesson, and we will debate on this a little later. Government cannot enforce interest cuts, although whatever statements we made by the finance minister and so on, it ultimately boils down to Reserve Bank of India. Now this is an issue which is very important throughout the world, and certain steps have been taken in some of the advanced countries to resolve this lack of power of the government to influence interest rates. Precisely this is the problem, lack of power of the government to influence interest rates directly. Inadequate progress on the ease of business doing business front, which I already said. China is 90 and Pakistan is 120. Mind you, China is still 90. One expected that they should go up the ladder much quicker, but they're still at 90. So these four, I think, are very important elements in the tardy growth of the government in terms of implementing reforms, but more follow. Infrastructure projects are still not taking off. In spite of several positive sounds being made in this direction, they're still not taking off. So, there is a figure which I can't quite remember at the moment. It needs a very substantial investment to make this happen. But because of this problem of fiscal deficit, setting targets of 4.1 and whatever 3.9, this is an issue which is not happening. In fact, if I may just predict what I am going to discuss shortly, contrary to common lingo and even the media and everybody, you see the single most important two, when you discuss the economy, there are two important figures which are bandied around. If you think over it, how much GDP has grown, 6, 7, 8, whatever percentage, and also what is the fiscal deficit. Have we been able to limit the fiscal deficit to whatever we predicted, 4.1%? I think GDP growth is fine, but in my view, and in the view of a large number of economists in the world who belong to a different school of thought, that the thought is like this, very simply put, is that if you want to grow a country quickly because of years of inaction or lack of progress or whatever, please do not care about fiscal deficits. Now this is a contrary thought. You see, people in this country are bugged with fiscal deficits. So why is it 5%? It should go, okay, fine, we have achieved 4.1. We should lower it further to 3.9. But there is a point of view that fiscal deficit, obsession with that, fiscal deficits are important, but an obsession with that is counterproductive. We take the example of Greece, what has happened, you are all aware what's happening there. But we'll analyze that history for a moment, just to put this thought. And I'll quote one economist extensively, and I'll recommend to all of you who have matters of general interest and economic interest. This economist's name is Paul Krugman. Paul Krugman, K-R-U-G-M-A-N. Now he's a Nobel Prize winning economist, not for fiscal deficit and growth. He did some original work on international trade, and he's a Nobel Prize winning economist. Why I'm mentioning his name, we'll discuss him. But he writes a weekly column in New York Times. Every Monday he writes a column. It's just a beautiful, small essay. It won't take you more than 20 minutes to read. But if you go to articles by Paul Krugman in New York Times on the web, you can easily locate it. And I suggest that it should be part of your compulsory weekly reading. Most brilliant writer, and I would say that as a novelist he would have been great also, because his ease and facility of writing. So Paul Krugman is one of those. These are called actually, they're different names. He's a pro-Keynes. You've heard of Lord Keynes, the famous economist in the 1930s and 40s. These people all belong to the Keynes school. There are other schools also. At that time there was a huge debate as to how to grow the country. You remember there was a famous depression in 1939. So the post-depression, the thought was how to grow the country, various countries which were affected. And there was a debate between Lord Keynes and a gentleman called Frederick Hayek, H-A-Y-E-K. Ultimately, most countries adopted the prescription of Lord Keynes. What is the prescription we'll come to? Which is broadly, I mentioned that ignore fiscal deficits. No, and do what? That we will discuss. Sorry, I digress, but this is one area where we need to. GDP growth is fine, but fiscal deficit obsession, in my view, is undesirable. And this is one of the three controversies which I thought I will discuss. Sorry, coming back to this, lack of progress, increasing consumption, expenditure, and creation of jobs, resulting in subdued corporate profitability. If you analyze the 2014-15, there is an analysis by Economic Times recently. Corporate profits have not really improved. In fact, in most of the cases, most of the sectors, it has gone down. The final figures are still not there. Obviously, because 2015 accounts are slowly coming out. By August, we should be able to take a view. Inability to carry other political parties on economic and social issues. Now, I don't know whether it's a deficit or not. That's the usual problem which happens in democracy like ours. But fact of the matter is we are unable to carry. Maybe there is inadequate process of consultation on certain matters. Threats of retrospective and punitive taxation remains alive. Periodically, what the government thinks and what the tax department does are totally opposite. The recent example, the most recent example is the levy of MAT on foreign funds, which has, the finance minister has managed to curb the problem somewhat, but still remains. So there are a whole lot of, you saw the list, previous page and this page, a whole lot of performance deficit. I call them performance deficit because corrective steps have not been taken, or or maybe about to be taken, but not yet. Having discussed all these, let's come to land acquisition bill, which I said I will share with you. I'm sure many of you are aware of it, so pardon me if I am repeating the problem. But there are 3 or 4 problems with the land acquisition bill. Why you think people are marching to Delhi with farmers and so on? Whole lot of people are objecting. Forget the parties, even grassroots farmers are also objecting. Why? See, there was a land acquisition bill act passed in 2013. It was already there in the previous regime. There was a land acquisition act. But this is a revised version, reformed version, so-called reformed version, which has been presented and passed in one house but not being objected to in the other house. This is because this current bill, or it's bill, it's not act as yet, it allows acquisition of farmers' land. I'm stating because I know the matter, that's why otherwise I wouldn't. They allow the purchase of farmers' land with a certain degree of freedom, which is not desirable. In other words, there is some merit in the various protests being made by now, what are these provisions? There are only 4 issues, so I will not go into details, but these are macro issues. You will see the last point. You see, the earlier act contained a provision that you cannot acquire these lands without 80% of the landowners agreeing to the purchase. Now, this is the other side of the coin. It makes it difficult to buy land if 80% has to approve. How do you get the approval? But the point is, these are agricultural lands. We are talking of agricultural land, not absolute bare pieces of land where nobody is bothered and you can get the approval. 80% of the landowners must agree for a private project, and 70% of the landowners, which is not mentioned in this slide, too much detail, 70% of the landowners must agree where there is a PPP project, public-private partnership, 80 and 70. Now what this bill has done, it says okay, 80 and 70 will remain, but in 5 cases, if you are setting up a project for defense, for rural infrastructure, definition unknown, rural infrastructure, affordable housing, then industrial corridors and infrastructure again. So there is a lack of preciseness in the definition of these 5 cases. In these 5 cases, the government by notification can exempt the requirement of the 80% or 70%. In other words, you can acquire land without any approval of even 1% by if projects fall into these 5 categories. Although notifications have to be issued, but that's a formality more than anything else. So therefore, there is a case for these 5 categories being exempted, not being exempted from the 80% or 70% requirement. This is the crux of the problem. Certain categories of projects have been specified where you can dispense with the approval of the landowners. That means you can do what you like. Effectively, it boils down to that. Then, rest of the points easy to follow. Earlier, there was a requirement for social impact assessment studies. In other words, you find out how is it affecting them, apart from the landowners, the environment, the ecology of the place, and so on and so forth. Those social impact assessment studies have also been dispensed with for these 5 categories. Then relaxations have been made again in these categories. So the most important point in the whole debate is that those 5 categories. What do they mean? Relaxations have been made for acquisition of irrigated multi-cropped lands also. Earlier there were huge restrictions on such lands that you cannot buy, but now you can relax the purchase of those lands. Then there was a final provision in the last point, the provision in the old Act, 2013 Act, that okay, somebody has taken it, but if he has not done anything with the project, with his project, within a period of 5 years, then the land has to be returned. What the current bill does is that it has retained the provision, but it says should be returned within 5 years or within a specified time period. That means it could be 10 years, 15 years. whichever is longer. So therefore, enough opportunity has been given to retain the lands for a longer period of time. So these are the four objections. To reiterate, one is this approval of 80-70% of landowners. Second is social impact assessment studies, acquisition of irrigated multi-crop lands, and provision for return of land, which is of course a subsequent step. So therefore, these issues, rightly in my view, have raised the hackles of people. Naturally, the opposition is particularly upset about it, and the party which framed it in 2013. But farmers have also taken up arms to remove some of these points. The other side of the coin, everything has two sides. Other side of the coin is the current government thinks that unless you do this, India's development will be hampered or will be slowed down. But there are again a counterpoint that you do not develop India at the cost of taking off agricultural lands and penalizing these farmers. Although the government is trying to increase the compensation, to be fair to them, the compensation amount is proposed to increase substantially. So it is not easy to pass this bill. This is what I am trying to say, that you can take it from me today that this bill will be changed before it is passed. In fact, in the Lok Sabha when it was passed, there were some changes made. Not material, but some changes were made. But that is not enough. The basic issue remains with this land acquisition bill that the people who own the land have been kind of partially done away with, if I put it rather crudely. So it appears that changes are inevitable, in which case the entire process of land acquisition bill or the act will be delayed. So, is it clear? Actually, I don't remember the figures now, but this has been increased substantially. But I don't remember the figures.
Sir, does the state government have any say on the land acquisition bills?
Not at the moment, because this central act, which if it is passed, will apply to the states.
It will be uniform for all the states? Will it be uniform for all the states?
Yeah.
Because the character of land in all the states are not the same.
That is true. You are raising some of the issues which have been raised actually correctly, but I thought I'd illustrate the major issues with this. Now, goods and services tax, there is no doubt on this one, GST, in the sense that if it can be implemented, there are several estimates, but I think the bulk of the estimates have a central figure, which is that if you implement GST, your GDP will go up by, GDP growth rate will increase by 1.25%, which is a very significant impact. By implementing GST, your growth rate, which is 7.4 now or whatever, could go up to 8.6 once you implement it. But here also, and this is my view, is a desirable piece of provision. But where is it stuck at the moment? There are basically about 8 or 10 issues, which if you attend a seminar on GST, you will know. But I think the three major ones are, first is the most important one, we don't know, but the suggested rate of GST would be around 25-26%, which is too high. Although, mind you, you are doing away with excise duty, sales tax, service tax, and so on and so forth. But still, the rate of 25%, there have been objections from several quarters that the ideal rate, now one does not know how it has been calculated, should be around 17 to 18%. At the moment, the talk is of 25-26. One hears figures around that range. And various chambers, in fact, I had the opportunity to be part of the Central Chamber's representation to the government. So we suggested 17, rightly or wrongly. The chamber did some work on this and came out with this figure. They basically added up all the taxes which will be eliminated and worked out an average on that basis. So that suggested rate is a big stumbling block. Then this is more technical, but it has an important impact. Additional non-semblatable tax of 1%, which doesn't look a very high figure, on interstate supply of goods. That means the states can take some additional benefit other than the basic rate. But here what will happen is, if you are charging on interstate supply, you will have to put checkpoints on one state's border with another state. And the third point is, relates to that. It has been estimated by in several quarters, several places, that if you continue with the, of course, octroi, you are not continuing to dispense with it, but more than octroi, those checkposts at the border of states or whatever, several points in India, those are increasing logistics costs, the waiting period and the consumption of fuel. Logistics costs are going up by around 25% than other than compared to what they should have been. And moment you employ 1% tax on interstate movement of goods, those waybills and the checkposts will continue. So that's a far worse impact than that 1%. So these are some of the issues which are bothering the implementation of GST. But here one is hopeful that they will be sorted out and implemented pretty quickly. And the original implementation date, if I remember right, was 1st April 2016. We'll probably still achieve it. But these issues need to be sorted out. Particularly the high rate of tax, if it is like that. And secondly, those freedom in the movement of goods between states. Here again, then it appears that it can be put through, but barring these corrections which will not allow it to be implemented. So, but I think there is a fair chance of this happening over the next 3 months, 3 to 4 months. But the final conclusion in these few slides, if land acquisition and GST are not implemented, it will have significant impact on India's growth path, growth trajectory, and also market sentiments, because these two have been touted as the most important steps being taken by the government. So I thought I'll go into little detail on these two issues and outline the problems for you. Now, having given a brief idea of what's happening, which most of you are aware, but I thought I'll put it in a concise fashion. Let us target the 3 or 4 controversies which are there. If you remember, the first one we discussed was this government versus Reserve Bank of India on interest rates. Now, what are the details? You see, interest rate is always deemed to be a very important factor for economic development. If you ask any corporate, they will say interest is the most important. You must reduce interest rates by 2 to 3%. And lots of these foreign investors have joined the clamor. If you read Economic Times, somebody or the other is being interviewed all the time. And their first demand, in fact, there are 2 demands they have raised. Foreigners, and not Indians. These are heads of funds and so on. One is that this non-collectible debts of PSUs need to be sorted out, public sector units, public sector banks, PSBs, not PSUs, public sector banks. And secondly, interest rates must be brought down by at least 2% over the next 6 months. According to them, these factors will go a big way towards reviving India quickly and also promoting investments. Now, the second para, if we come to in this, there is one deputy governor who has been appointed 2 years back, Mr. Patel. He gave a report which was kind of a landmark in their sphere, I mean the sphere of Reserve Bank and the banks. He made 2 conclusions in that report, both of which are relevant. One is that inflation should be judged by CPI, that is Consumer Price Index, and not wholesale price index. Earlier, wholesale price was the more important price, but he argued that consumers, what they are paying for it, there is some logic in it, that consumers, what they are paying for it should be the sole judge of inflation. Because, and secondly, this is important, RBI's monetary policy should have only one target, which is inflation control. Now, why this statement is wrong, we'll come to in a minute. So, CPI should be the judge of inflation, and secondly, RBI's monetary policy should have only inflation control as its target. The first argument is somewhat flawed, the CPI concept, Consumer Price Index, because most of it most of the index is on account of food and fuel, whose prices are administered, whose prices are not determined on the basis of demand and supply, that is the normal inflation factors, which are demand and supply. Whereas if you have taken wholesale price index, percentage of these two would have fallen substantially. So this is a, I suppose, the intellectual argument and a practical one to some extent, that you must set the benchmark based on an index which responds to demand and supply factors and not to administered factors. That is, if it is administered by the government on some other basis, it is not a true reflection of inflation. But this argument, which was being made when the report came about 1 year back, has now died down and people have started accepting CPI as a mode. It's become part of the normal. And the second point is important, where I wanted to spend a little time on discussing some economic theories. See, normally a central bank has, if you take an average of central banks all across the world, it has 3 targets. One is inflation control, definitely. That's an important objective of any central bank. But growth. In other words, the central bank should be a party to growth also. You cannot say that being the apex bank of the country, I will only concentrate on inflation, having disregarded growth factors. So they should be a party to growth, and the process which is for government is concentrating on growth, not that they are excluding other factors. So they should be a party to growth. And other point is financial stability. In other words, these concepts of deficits, fiscal deficits, and also current account deficits or whatever, they should be a party to that. They should join hands with the government to ensure financial stability. In fact, 2 views, recent views, one is a little older, about a year old, Gordon Brown. Recent articles on Gordon Brown, by the way, projects him as one of the best prime ministers that UK had, compared to his usual reputation that he's a kind of a low-profile figure. Gordon Brown's article, as well as Christine Lagarde, the present, she is the present MD of IMF, they advocate that growth targeting should be the prime objective of central bank rather than inflation. So has the government, has the Reserve Bank gone wrong in targeting inflation solely to the exclusion of other factors? They are disregarding growth. Any noise that the government makes that my growth is being stilted because you have kept the interest rates high is being disregarded, because they are saying if we reduce interest, then inflation will go up. So inflation control is the sole objective. So there is a considerable debate on this now at the moment, and what is the fallout of the debate, which has happened in many countries of the world, which I was mentioning earlier. This sort of decisions are normally taken by a joint body. Now in that body, central bank is represented as well as the operating government. In other words, there should be representation from both sides so that both the views are taken into account. Some concession has been made by the central bank recently, Reserve Bank, our Reserve Bank, that there will be a couple of people from the other side on our decision-making board, but they will be minority. So, in other words, the true spirit, I'm just speaking very broadly now, these are matters, but generally both parties should be stakeholders in this decision-making. The point that I'm trying to say is both the government and the Reserve Bank of India should have a say on interest rates. I mean, to come down to the brass tacks, both should have a say on interest rates and not at the whims and fancies of the central bank. Whims and fancies is not the right word. They have their own logic, but is the other party being excluded in the process? This is a very important debate which is sometimes reflected in the media, but not always. In addition, what happens in countries where central bank says that will be sole charge of inflation control, there is another negative. If the inflation is high, the government says, look, I had nothing to do with it and these guys messed it up. I mean, that is actually a fallout. Some of the countries it has happened. Inflation has reached high proportions and the central bank is the sole charge of that. Then they blame the central government blames the central bank of that country. So therefore, this is an important issue, how to administer interest rates and who should be the decision-making authority. Now, why this question has assumed so much importance in India today? Because of the demands being made for interest rate reduction. The current governor has a certain view. He says, look, I am going for inflation only. I cannot afford to reduce interest rate. Activity will go up, inflation will go up. And the other side of the other party is saying, but the activity has to go up. Growth has to happen. So there is an innate basic contradiction in the approaches being made now. So you will find considerable discussion on this matter, whether the interest rate should come down from the central bank or not. And you see stock markets reacting up every periodically. Once the governor says reduced by 1/4% or whatever, stock market tanks immediately because people are expecting a larger figure. So the question is, there are two basic questions here. One is that should both parties be part of the process or not? And secondly, should inflation targeting be the only objective, or growth should be added at least, so that they have a broader view of the subject. So. I'm sorry, there's some glitch here. Yeah, sorry. So, So we have discussed the policy issues involved in this battle of, it's a battle at the moment between the government and the RBI. Now, just to touch upon Lord Keynes again, the second part of it. In summary, Lord Keynes held the view that interest rate, what is the central bank doing? They're adjusting the interest rate to control inflation. His theory was totally different. He said interest rates is only one factor in controlling inflation. Inflation is a larger problem which depends on demand, supply and so on. For example, in India, it is more a supply side problem. In other words, demand is rising but supply is not there. So that's why inflation is happening. So according to Lord Keynes, the theory is not to control interest rates only, but also to look at fiscal policy. In other words, take an overall view of the matter, which is relevant. Why I'm putting it's relevant because there should be a combined body, as I said earlier, to control inflation, and they should look at several factors other than interest rates. So this simple matter has actually a lot of ramifications, and efforts are on at the moment to find a reasonable solution to the problem, because the current government feels, bottom line, is that this high interest rates, high is not correct, but lowering interest rates is a must for aiding growth, which they're almost going mad on it, increase the growth. Recent statement made by the finance minister we have seen, he has made a statement in USA, I think, that the 7.4 should easily be 10, which is not a joke, 10% growth rate. And one of the factors against that is the policy of the Reserve. So this is one area of controversy, that is the central bank's role vis-a-vis the government. Now let me come to this social expenditure dispute, which is actually, we said, I don't know whether some of you may be aware, this is a dispute between, it's called Sen Bhagawati dispute. It's a dispute between Amartya Sen and Jagdish Bhagawati. Now, what is this dispute? You might think that economists are disputing just for the sake of it. It is not so. There is a very important point involved here, and it will take you back to what I was saying earlier, that disregard fiscal deficit. Not totally, but don't place so much importance on fiscal deficit. But let's come to that in a moment. Before we go into this dispute, let us see a poverty matrix. I don't know what you feel. Here I may like to have your comment briefly. See, this is the international standard, which says that if your income is less than $1.25 per day per person, per day per capita, you are extremely poor. If you are between $1.25 to $2, you are moderately poor, and if you are 2 to 4, near poor, and middle class can be anything between 4 to 13. Now, in India, what has happened? The Indian norms are different, where I would like to broadly comment for a minute. Originally there was a Tendulkar committee. There was not the cricket player, there was a famous economist for Tendulkar. He's still there. And the other, then recently, about in July 2015, Mr. Rangarajan, who was the former governor of Reserve Bank of India, he also, the committee was formed under him. I got the figure somewhere. They have said that this single criteria is wrong, because for cities and towns there should be different criteria, which is fine. So, what should be the criteria for, let's try and look at the imported figure which is wrong. Yeah, what he is saying is that 32 per day. 32 per day. This is, mind you, 80. Let's just go to the extremely poor, and we have only discussed that. $1.25 is 80 rupees. Not. Is it 80? Yeah. 1/4. No, 75. 1/4. No, what is 75? He says 32 per day in the rural areas and 47 per day in towns and cities. Let us multiply by 30. This is per day per capita. So 32 multiplied by 30 is about 960 in rural areas. So that fellow should earn about 960 to not to be classified as extremely poor. And 47 per day, let's say around 1500 rupees. So 1500 rupees you need in towns to survive not being extremely poor. And as per the international guideline, I think World Bank has $1. This is IMF's, I forgot, 1.25, which is about 2,400 roughly. So, what do you think is correct between the two? I mean, nobody may be correct, but can you survive on 47 per day in a city? I don't know what you think. Huh? No, Tendulkar committee figure was not 47, it was 38. 38. International. The flaw in this logic of 37 and 42 is that this probably, I think some critics have pointed out, probably that is the reason. They have taken the cost of 2 meals a day. Now what about, not cash, what about shelter? What about health? Exactly. It is a must. Now the point is, even if you take a higher figure of $1.25 per day, can you believe 25% of the country is extremely poor? Now where are we living? Which country are we in? 25% is in the extremely poor category, moderately poor 37.4%. If you add these two up, they are up to $2, which as you mentioned, $2 per day is 120 multiplied 30 is about 3,000 odd. Another 37.4%. That is 62% of the country is living in this condition. It is mind-boggling if you think. If you read Economic Times and Business Standard and other papers every day, you you are in a different world. You are in a different world. Your thinking is different. But the moment you think that 60% of India is in this condition, this is of course a 1-year-old figure, slightly changed now. And this is where the same Bhagavati dispute is important. Why I quoted this statement? This is where the Amartya Sen Bhagavati. So just listen carefully to this. What is the dispute? Now, before that, 1 or 2 points that the second and third categories can easily sink into the worst category if there is, as the experts have said, just one illness away. In other words, if you have a serious illness in the family, you would immediately maybe go back to the worst category. That is 1.25 crores. And even in Telugu, Rangarajan's estimate, the current figure, I don't know correct or not, he's talking of 37 and 42. On that basis, he says actually 29.5% is, so his figure is higher. Beats me. How? He's set a higher target. But anyway, that's not, so about 60% are in this condition. Now what is the same Bhagavati dispute? I'm sorry to nomenclature it, put nomenclature on that, but it's well researched and well debated on this. What, in summary, if I may say one line, this is the dispute. Professor Sen feels that the poor should be hauled up first. I mean, they should be removed from the misery first, which is by allocating a large part of your budget on health, education, roads or whatever, I mean, general infrastructure also is not excluded infrastructure, and more importantly, by direct benefit transfer. In other words, you must help the poor to come up of this huge problem very quickly. And there is a lovely book by him and one gentleman called John Reyes, D-R-E-Z-E. They've written a seminal book on the subject, that how to improve India. What is Professor Bhagavati's view? His view is that don't give money like that, fritter away money. Give some logic in the sense that half the money doesn't reach. So you're spending 1,000 crores, you think, but only 500 is going. Rest is corruption and in the way and so on. So much better that you spend that 1,000 crores on growth. That is only on infrastructure, only on the industrial development, and moment you grow them, grow these factors, the poor will automatically improve. Now it's for you to judge which is the better way given this situation. Now both parties agree, not that Professor Sen feels that growth is not essential. He says of course it is essential. You spend money on infrastructure and rest of it, but also you spend a substantial money on social aspects, even by direct benefit transfers. So this is the logic. Professor Sen, I read out, it is very important. Professor Sen believes that the poor have to be empowered first. Actually it's a sequencing problem in a way, but it can't be dismissed just like that. However, it's a sequencing problem. The poor have to be empowered first. So expenditure on health, education, availability of food before they can take advantage of overall growth of the country. This effectively means allocating significant percentages of the budget expenditure to these heads. Otherwise, India will continue to fare poorly in the Human Development Index. In this view is supported by, surprisingly, Pakistani economist who is Mahbubul Haq, he is a highly regarded international economist, and he feels that this is absolutely correct point of view. Professor Bhagavati feels that this argument doesn't hold good. His view is that the budget expenditure should be largely oriented towards infrastructure, manufacturing and such other heads, rather than overemphasizing the social angle. He is not dismissing the social angle, and Professor Sen is not dismissing the growth angle. This is important. The social aspects will automatically fall into place subsequent to the growth, or concomitantly with the growth. Professor Sen feels, this is the most important part of this slide, Professor Sen feels there is a time lag in this, that is first growth and then the poor coming up, which is unbearable for the poor in India. In summary, I mean, if he was present here, he would have given various arguments, but in summary what he's saying, the situation is not so bearable and you need drastic measures for this kind of level. So this is the, so this essentially is a sequencing issue between growth and distribution, total distribution. But then what you do here, there was another gentleman, Professor Bhagawati's colleague, I would say, who is now the, I think, deputy chairman or vice chairman of the Niti Uddog, which is the Planning Commission's new version. His name is Arvind Panagali, again a very eminent economist. He made a statement before this budget which appealed to me and which is more like Paul Krugman. He said this obsession with fiscal deficit is not good. He belongs to the Bhagawati camp. There is a merit in this camp. If you want to grow, if you want to have growth, you should spend. But then these two gentlemen are not really talking, both are right. So how do you make both right? They are talking correctly. How do you make both right? This is the theory which I wanted to promote to you in the sense I'm promoting it, the thought of these neo-Keynesian economists, that don't be obsessed by fiscal deficits of 4.1%. Even if you make your fiscal deficit 6.1%, 2% more, then perhaps you can marry both these objectives. You can spend enough money on the poor, improving them, bringing them up. You can also spend money on growth. So both objectives can be achieved. Now, which means that this fiscal deficit in present situation of tax collections and so on, unless the corporate and other activities improve, you cannot afford more than, if you want to stick to only one of these two, that 4.1% is fine. But is it right in a country like this to leave one huge segment of your population behind by in the obsession of, that's why I use the word obsession, of curtailing fiscal deficit? Now, where does Paul Krugman come into it? This is important. So this theory has explained to you what is the dispute and the limitation of the persistence with limiting the fiscal deficit is acting against, to be honest with Professor Sen's views. Professor Sen feels that any budget corrections are made by reducing first those expenditures, that is social expenditure, not the growth expenditure. So he is written extensively on the subject, and I would request you to see the net on some of Professor Sen's writings, which illustrate he and John raised. Now, austerity. Why I'm talking austerity is an important issue. Now, Greece I was referring to. Let's see what happened in Greece. Austerity is now part of the common man's usage, daily lingo in Europe, particularly in the context of Greece, earlier Ireland, and so on. Basically, what the European Union is doing is that, led by Germany and one or two others, but led by Germany also, they are saying that most of the European countries are over-borrowed. In the budget, mind you, here one is talking of the budget. Over-borrowed in the budget. The government is over-borrowed. Now, so the debt percentage is about 80% of GDP, 100% of GDP, 120% of GDP, and so on. The second para, I mentioned this so-called, so Germany is saying you must be austere, you must practice austerity. How to do austerity? You must reduce your debt. How you reduce your debt? You curtail your expenditure. Your budget has to be balanced. So this is a disaster. In other words, it goes exactly against Professor Sen's theory in a way, that you curtail expenditure. So therefore, what has happened in Greece, I don't know whether you are aware it happened, they were a spate of suicides, protests, because lot of austerity, expenditure has to be cut. So where the areas where they were cut affected common people. So a whole lot of issues in Greece. So this is the austerity point. Now, who encouraged the austerists? In fact, two Harvard economists in 2010, Rogoff and Reinhardt, they published a study. And this study was more empirical than anything else. It said that they analyzed the debt to GDP percentages of several countries and concluded that those countries where the debt to GDP ratio is high, the growth is low. And those whose debts were low compared to GDP, their growth rate was high. So therefore, the only answer is that you must curtail your debt. And how do you curtail your debt? By limiting your expenditure on budget expenditure, which Now, they are not saying where you cut your expenditure. But traditionally, what happens is that the government cannot correct its non-planned expenditure, salaries and salaries, traveling expenses. It occupies. If you see the current budget, I can bring the figures 2014-15. I spoke at one institute seminar, and I illustrated that how irrelevant is Indian budget. Why? Because its share of development expenditure is minuscule compared to a country size of India. Their expenditure on salaries and wages and so on of staff, nothing wrong with that, but is much higher. Because of the obsession with fiscal deficit, where it gets hit is social angles and also growth angles. Both are in fact affected. And by the way, these two economics calculations were later proved wrong because they used hundreds and thousands of Excel sheet calculations. So some two guys got together, economists again, I forget the name now, and they found several errors in the Excel calculations. And they recalculated and found that this conclusion is not correct. But meanwhile, Germany and others embraced this idea of austerism. So they imposed on Greece that you must cut your expenditure. Where you cut is your problem. As a result, the unrest in Greece. And so what is the issue? Assuming you cut expenditure, and there are two issues as I said. One is that you cut on social expenditure, your growth also goes down. So Paul Krugman, this slide illustrates that. Paul Krugman says you are trying to reduce your debt to GDP ratio.